You've been doing this style of eating for way longer than even we have.
13 years to be exact. I know how horrible it is having that nagging voice of get up and go get some ice cream, get up and eat some of those chips.
What it's like done for you, like how transformative, it's probably hard to put into words, how transformative it's been for you to draw that line and to stay on this side for so long and to be doing this carnivore diet.
You know, and people say, oh, you can't have that. No, I can have it. I choose not to. In most people's mind, the way I eat meat, seafood, and eggs. And it's so bizarre to pretty much the world, right? But when you think back, this is what man ate for millions of years. This has also become like a side passion of mine to let these diabetics know you can reverse your diabetes. And people are like, but doesn't it get boring? Aren't you bored? I go, no. Are you bored waiting in line at the pharmacy? Are you bored waiting in the waiting room of your doctor? Mm-hmm. I'm not bored doing any of those things at all. That would be boring to me. You know, I always say there's two goals. Have sex with the lights on and always look good naked and be able to do my cartwheels on my beach for the rest of my life.
PowerProject family, how's it going? Now, I want to talk to you guys about Within You hydration specifically. They have This Is the Way, which is an amazing protein that tastes really good. There's a fasting gum, but the hydration is very interesting because there's no other electrolyte supplement like it out on the market. It has 60 milligrams of magnesium, 320 potassium, 1,000 milligrams of sodium, but it also has 500 milligrams of aminos, essential amino acids, and then 2 milligrams of zinc. Two amazing flavors, blueberry lemon and a salted caramel. That's you, Andrew.
That is me.
So, guys,
my favorite.
You know how important electrolytes are? They help you perform better. You don't get cramps during workouts. And, with the diets, you need good electrolytes. So, Andrew, how can they check it out?
Yes, that's over at markbellslingshot.com. And at checkout, enter promo code PowerProject10 to save 10% off your entire order. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
Yeah.
All right, Mark, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready to go.
You're ready? Okay, let's roll then.
How you doing, doctor?
Just great. How are you?
I'm excited to have you here because we talk about eating meat all the time. We talk about being meat-based, but we're dudes, you know? And so sometimes when we try to share this message, I think that people don't think that everyone could participate. But you've been doing this style of eating for way longer than even we have.
13 years to be exact. And so grateful to have found it because it's really changed my life. And I really only came into this carnivore, let's say, social media world more recently because I started seeing that there was people saying, well, yeah, that's great, Mark. You eat meat. It looks like it's working great, but you can't sustain that. That's not sustainable. You can't do that long term. That can't be healthy long term. And I kept hearing that over and over. And I was just like, hello. Yeah, here I am 13 years later, feeling better than ever. I feel like in a way I hate to use the term reverse aging, but I feel that everybody who comes to it has noticed dramatic improvements in the way they feel, the way they look. And to hear people say, you're going to end up with a heart attack, you're going to kill yourself, it really triggers me because I'm like, no, it can't be farther from the truth. This is the natural ancestral diet. This is the way our bodies are meant to be nourished. And that's really the bottom line for it, really.
Do you think that people need to draw as hard of a line as you did? Because you kind of make it sound like maybe about 13 years ago that you just stopped eating sugar and just made this real commitment. I'm sure there's a lot of reasons we can get into those, but do you think that other folks need to, kind of adhere to that same stringent kind of discipline?
Now, I certainly feel there's absolute huge improvements in health just by eliminating sugar, grains, processed foods, and all seed oils. I mean, if somebody just started with that, did that, they'd probably notice dramatic improvement in their health. And so to say you have to go, let's say, full bore and give up vegetables, nuts, seeds, and fruit, because that's really that fringe stuff outside of sugar, grains, and the seed oils. No, I feel because you can get such a health benefit by not going full bore, great. For me personally, after doing all the research and seeing how toxic vegetables really can be, and they have phytates, lectins, things that are really not healthy for us, things that are meant to keep them on earth and keep us from eating them, I was like, well, why am I putting that in my body? And then we'll go into the fruit thing with the fructose. Any taste of sweet for anybody who, and those of you out there will know what I'm talking about. Giving up the taste of sweet is really difficult. Sugar is addictive. And for me personally, fruit will also continue to trigger the cravings. And so that's why I draw the line, because this lifestyle is so simple without including all that other extraneous noise that causes cravings and issues for me. That's my reasoning. But for somebody who maybe is not so strongly addicted to the taste of sweet and doesn't keep what I call falling in the ditch, it's so easy when you're out in social situations, holidays, vacations, to say, oh, well, just this time. And then next thing you know, you're down the slippery slope and eating that junk again.
How many days do you think someone would have to experiment with something like a meat-based diet to like kind of get exactly what you're talking about? Like, you think someone just give it a go for 3 to 5 days or something like that?
I mean, I've coached people for about 12 years now, and I strongly recommend that it's a 90-day trial. A lot of people say 30 days, World Carnivore Months, 30 days. That's a great way to start. But to really feel the effects of it and to get over the keto adaptation and getting your body to say, oh, wait a minute, hey, you're not putting junk in there anymore. This is what we're dealing with. And to start feeling benefits, because you have to remember, people are eating for decades, 20, 30, 40, 50 years before they now pick up something that somebody says, plants a seed to say, let me try this carnivore thing. But they've had decades of their bodies being inflamed from having that garbage, sugar, grains, and seed oils in them. Your body's not going to flip on a switch and in 5 days say, I feel great. Some people might have a fairly quick response to it, but I always say, do the 90 days. I mean, you can learn so much in 90 days, and 90 days is just a blip on the radar as far as your life. So that's where I feel you'll get the most benefit out of seeing if it's going to work for you.
When you mentioned the sugar is addictive, and I want to know, for you, what is the effect on you when you, let's say, when's the last time you reintroduced fruits, actually, since you've been carnivore for 12 years or 13 years?
Yeah, well, I did not reintroduce sugars. And way back at the beginning of carnivore, I experimented.
We're in over her heads today, but she's hardcore. We're finding out.
Yeah, well, and only because for me, it's what really works, and it's what makes me feel good. And I know how horrible it is having just that constant, that nagging voice of get up and go get some ice cream, get up and eat some of those chips, get up. And I have such food freedom without having that it's not worth it to go back into what I called back down into the ditch. So I did way at the very beginning of just trying to wrap my brain around this carnivore thing when I first learned about it on that zeroing in on health. I was, out at an orchard picking nectarines and peaches with my kids, and just the smell and the aroma, I was like, I'm just going to have half a peach. Well, I realized that half a peach turns into a couple hours later wanting another half a peach and wanting 3 peaches. And then it's, like I said, it's a slippery slope right back into where you are at. And so I just feel like there's a spectrum, just like in alcoholism, where some people, you can be an alcoholic and just really drink 2 or 3 drinks every single night. And you can be an alcoholic where once you have one drink, you drink till you black out. And then there's, everything in between that. With sugar addiction, it's very similar in that I feel that some people can just say, all right, I can have a piece of birthday cake on my birthday and they're okay.
Yeah.
And they can handle that and do that. A lot of people I find have that piece of cake or they're on vacation and then it slides into that full weekend and then it slides into a month and then it slides into gaining back the weight that they had taken off, and then they're just self-sabotaged and frustrated, and it really comes down to, and I don't know what your personal experiences are with giving up the taste of sweet and giving up sugar, and if you've ever actually tried it for a length of period of time, but it's a really tough thing to do. We're bombarded constantly. Like you go to Home Depot to buy a screwdriver and there's Kit Kats and Snickers in front of you at the cash register. So it's almost like and people don't realize it, is if when you're a recovered alcoholic and you're at a party and people know that, they're not saying, oh, just have one shot. I mean, come on, you only live once. Like people aren't doing that. But with this whole sugar addiction, when you've given it up and you're in a situation, people are just like, they can't comprehend that you're not going to eat it and they're offering it to you. And it's almost pushed upon you. Oh, Aunt Sally just made your favorite apple pie. You can't say no, and people don't realize that when it comes to an addiction of eating sweet things, it really has to be abstinence. You can't moderate. I can't eat half of a cupcake. There's just no such thing.
Same.
I can't moderate it. So that's where this whole thing with abstinence, with anything that you feel that you should not be eating and you want to give up, but you have a hard time giving it up, it has to be abstinence. You're not going to moderate that substance.
And I think it's amazing that you mentioned how it's a spectrum and kind of relating it to individuals who are alcoholics, because there are some people I know that can have one donut. And if you have the ability to do that, you have the awareness in yourself to do that, then you're fine. Me, it's not one donut, never will be one donut. It's always going to be multiple until I'm full.
And
right?
if you have one in the morning, then you're like,
I'm fucked. Let's go. But like it doesn't happen for me personally. That doesn't happen with fruits. Like I'm totally okay with fruits. I like eating fruit, but I that's something that I just can't really go overboard with. So I think it's necessary for individuals to figure out where they are. Like going cold turkey off of that stuff is beneficial, and then figuring out what can you maybe add in safely that might bring some benefit to your life, and know where you have that self-control. Because I don't have self-control with Ben and Jerry's, so I won't have it often. Or I really won't. But I think for some individuals, they may be able to get away with having a little bit less restriction when it does come to those things, if they have that level of self-control.
It's interesting that you're talking about other people's hangups with what you eat. Isn't that interesting, right? Like other people are so caught up in like, you're really not going to eat that. You're not going to have a drink.
Yeah, like that, and that's what I actually tell people, because
come on, have some fun.
Yeah, and
that's what they'll say, right?
Yeah, and I tell people, you have control of what passes through your lips. I mean, you can't let anybody's encouragement back into your best friend there, your addiction, to get to you. But in response to what you just said about the fruit, I remember I could have a quart of strawberries, and I'm cleaning off the stems to put it in a bowl for my kids, and every other one would go in my mouth. Every other one. Or then I pick
lots of parents do that, and they don't. It's mindless stuff.
Yeah. And then picture like a bag of dried apricots. Oh my God, that's just like, that's like candy.
That is candy. Yeah.
So where do you draw the line with fruit? And so, I wouldn't sit there and eat 4 apples, but I would certainly switch over to a mango and then onto a peach. And then let's cut up a banana on top of some granola, and then we're right into
Might as well throw some peanut butter in there.
It's a party.
Well, and then let's get on to the whole thing of a bowl and mixed nuts. I mean, forget it. And that's why, nuts are off the table. They're just, people could say, oh, they're natural. That's part of, it's a natural food. And I was like, well, it's not natural to eat a whole bowl of.
Well, it would also naturally take you like 10 hours to get like a decent amount of almonds after trying to crack the shells open and everything.
Exactly. And then think about all the, they're high in oxalates, and they're actually inflammatory. They're high in omega-6. And when I say that to people who are so into like, spinach smoothies and eating almond butter and almond this and almond that, I'm like, yeah, I mean, they can't comprehend that I'm actually saying to them that it's really not a healthy food for me to eat. And, and I say, look into it if you're interested, because there's such cognitive dissonance with being told vegetables, fruits, nuts are all healthy, and they cannot really, it's hard to wrap your brain around.
Well, there is some research, right, that there are certain aspects of meat even sometimes that aren't great for us. Is that correct? Or is that kind of like the way it's prepared, the way it's cooked, like if you barbecue it or things like that, like you can
I think
run into some issues.
You mean
right?
the thing with the charring it and then that kind of stuff? Yeah.
So if people are willing to like see that's a natural, it's a natural food. They should also be willing to give up on their side of the vegan side and say, okay, that sounds reasonable. If there's these things that I think that meat have and that eggs have that are negative, then maybe these other natural things that come from the earth, maybe they can harm us a little bit too. They should be able to give up a little ground there, right?
Yeah, and then they're always quick to say, with the killing of the animals and all that. I'm like, you know what? There is a circle of life here. Yeah. There's a true circle of life, and they don't understand. And if they really, there's so many documentaries out there now. I know Vinnie Tortorich puts out some great ones, and how many rabbits, fox, rodents are killed just preparing a crop for soy or corn. And there's so much more, animals that perish in that production than the one cow that I would eat for an entire year that's just out there eating grass, So, yeah, there's and then you can go into the whole processed meat thing. And I mean, ideally, we don't eat processed meat, but do I eat pepperoni and salami sometimes? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a quick question. Back to the nuts thing. You don't really, I'm guessing you don't snack much, right?
No, I actually really try to not snack at all.
Yeah.
And mainly because with this way of eating, you get hungry, and I'll eat a pound and a half ribeye.
A meal.
I don't need an hour.
How's
3
that
hours.
for a first date?
Yeah.
Right? The girl orders like a big ass prime rib and just
like what?
Well, and they inevitably always want to put it in front of the guy, and I go, come to mama.
And I asked you that because one thing is when people think about like nuts, certain types of fruits, etc., a lot of people end up having finger food throughout the day. Like you were mentioning, you're preparing something for your kids, you have these strawberries, you're just picking at it and eating. And for most people, that is a big habit that they need to get rid of, the habit of just randomly snacking on little things. Because I admit, if I have nuts around, I will be snacking on them constantly. That's why I don't.
We talk often about steps. How many steps are you taking in a day? And that can be important. But imagine if you just cut back on your snacking.
Or don't snack at all. Like if you cut back on it.
If you got rid of it, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be incredible.
And those nuts or any type of snack add up to a lot of calories for a lot of people. And if that habit was literally cut, that kind of gets rid of the foods that you typically snack on, but you focus on eating meals like you are, a lot of people would be in a better place.
Right. And I think also it's pretty important to remember too that our bodies weren't intended to keep eating 5-6 meals a day. I mean, we went out for the hunt. You got the animal, you dragged it back to the village, and you feast on it. and you might not eat for a day or two. And I'm not saying that I'm promoting extended fasting, but I'm just saying that this whole snacking thing throughout the day is just not normal to have our digestive system kind of constantly working. And and it's kind of a wonderful thing too, to eat your meals and then not feel like you're driven to keep going for the rest of the day and have to have a snack. Now, I will say I do love pork rinds.
Oh yeah, those are good.
And that is an approved carnivore snack. So
I have some pork rinds for you then.
yeah, I hope they're porking good rinds.
They are. Yeah, I got the salted butter one and I forget the other one, sour cream one or whatever.
I ate the super spicy one the other day. Owen couldn't handle it. Ryan started sweating.
I didn't
dug
try
it.
that one yet.
It's
I do want
good.
to try. I think they have a dill pickle one though too.
They have a salt vinegar one.
Yes.
That one's unbelievable.
And the salted butter really kind of reminds me of popcorn.
It's a legit replacement for popcorn, I think.
It is.
Porking good. I'm gonna give you my address, yo. This stuff is too. It's porking good.
It is.
It's actually really good.
It's unbelievable. It ends up being a good replacement. What I'm curious about is like what it's like done for you, like how transformative. It's probably hard to put into words how transformative it's been for you to draw that line and to stay on this side for so long and to be doing this carnivore diet.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes get choked up because I get so emotional about it, because I suffered for about 30 years of sugar, carb addiction, binge eating disorder, eating disorders. And
why do you think that part is so personal to you? What do you think is it connected to something you think?
no, I think I was just brought up in, a standard American family with a standard American diet. And we had Entenmann's crumb cakes, and we had,
those are
Friendly's ice cream, the chocolate covered donuts. And
got me sidetracked now.
yeah.
We always
And
do this.
I can pose myself over here. Those are delicious.
I just realized, I was overweight as a kid, and I didn't want, I just, I'd have a big slab of lasagna, and I wanted the second piece. And I just felt I had some sort of abnormal, never really could figure it out, but, I just overate. And I think it was, and then it just snowballed, because then I wanted to lose weight. Of course, I'm in, getting into high school, and it was so difficult, because at that point there was no thought process whatsoever that this was an actual addiction that I was having a hard time getting off of. I had no clue. So once I realized that I actually didn't need to eat carbohydrates, and that it's not a requirement for healthy living, and that I could actually eliminate that entire food group and be totally free of being addicted to this stuff, it was totally life-changing. And I find in so many of the people that I coach that I realize they're going through the same things like I did, where I tried to stop, and then I'd be clean for a couple of weeks, and then I'd be face down in it again. And it's really difficult. And, I just say to people, they say, well, that can't be addictive. That's not an addiction. You can't be addicted to sugar or, processed foods. And I say, really? Give it up for 90 days, and you come back and tell me how you did. I said, just try it yourself. And that means no ketchup, no barbecue sauce, no salad dressing. It's all got sugar in it.
And what about things that mimic sugar?
Well,
like a diet soda.
Yeah. Well, some people, it seems they can handle that and use that as like a crutch or a bridge. For me and for most people, it keeps the sugar cravings alive.
Get rid of it.
It's like
no plants at all. No coffee for you out there?
Coffee, I gave up caffeine about 10 years ago, because once I got free of, that whole mindset of having this noise in my head of this addiction, once I was free of that, I didn't want to be addicted to anything.
You're a savage.
Yeah, God, I just didn't.
I just right here. Sipping it.
Well, and then so
I'm just thinking like this is some like amazing like peace that you must have within yourself, like because we talk to all kinds of people that have these mental strengths, and we admire them, and they tell us all these things that they did. We had a guy on the show talking about how he earned financial freedom. He has a real estate business where he now earns, hundreds of millions of dollars. But he started out just by saving money as like a waiter. We admire these things and we put these things in like kind of high value. But sometimes when somebody just abstains from something or chooses a side so strongly, I got to tip my hat off to that too, because that is very difficult to do. But I'm imagining, like, from a philosophical standpoint and a place of like solitude, that you probably feel like a fucking badass.
So empowering. It's so empowering. And the fact that I feel, I'm 57, I've had 2 kids, and I do cartwheels on the beach in a bikini is really kind of cool. And it's really cool
that's amazing.
It's really cool to feel like I could hike a mountain. I can do whatever I want. I'm putting myself in the position to be able to enjoy a healthy, happy life for the rest of my life, however long that might be. No, I'm not going to kill myself with a heart attack eating all this red meat. But yeah, it's really, really empowering to, and in answer to go back to your coffee question, when I am at a restaurant with a group of people and everybody's got their creme brulee and their apple crumble and they're sharing and digging and passing the desserts, I will sit with a nice decaf cappuccino and totally enjoy the moment and just feel like I'm, kind of participating. And that's how I use coffee as sort of my crutch. I do love it. I love the smell, the warmth, the taste. And so, yeah, it's still in my life, but not the caffeine. And I actually do kind of use it, like I said, as a little stepping stone to get me out of a situation where it's really tough sometimes. Everybody is passing around the desserts, and it's like and people say, "Oh, you can't have that." No, I can have it. I choose not to. And then you have to really keep educating yourself and say, you know what? Cancer cells are fed by sugar. They're a very highly metabolic, cell type, and sugar is very inflammatory, and it's not a health food. So why are we putting it in our body? And then you could go down the rabbit hole of fructose and in fruit, and there's some that will propose I eat fruit along with my carnivore diet, but you can listen to scientists and say fructose is really not good for your liver. And, ultimately, yeah, people say, well, I got to enjoy life. I mean, I got to, you can't take everything away from me, but I say to that, if you're feeling great, you're off all meds, you're lean, you have no diagnosis, then eat what you're eating, But if you have goals that you're trying to reach and you're not there, just keep searching and seeking and trying and experimenting and figuring out what will work. And I'm just here to tell you what's worked for me and worked unbelievably well, and to put it out there that, yeah, this is possible. I sometimes joke when I'm doing my lives. I'll say to people, I was like, yeah, go ahead, go out there and fly your freak flag. I call it flying the freak flag because this is really kind of like, in most people's mind, the way I eat meat, seafood, and eggs. And it's so bizarre to pretty much the world, right? But when you think back, this is what man ate for millions of years. Meat, seafood, and eggs. What all of you are eating, the Doritos and the hoagies and the this and the that, that's kind of freaky.
Yeah.
You're eating this stuff that these companies have produced. You're purchasing it. I say, don't eat anything that comes in a bag, a box, a bottle, or a jar. It basically has ingredients that a company has manipulated into a product that they try to actually make addictive. They actually have addictive consults to get the right combination of salt, fat, and sugar so that it is actually addictive. So you keep buying it. And when you start getting your brain wrapped around that, this isn't so freaky then.
People are really controlled and pushed around by the 6 or 7 big food companies. And then those big food companies shove you into relying on big pharma, and it's like just so much. A lot of these things could be avoided if you can gain some discipline, earn some discipline into some of this stuff. And I always just suggest that people just look into it. Like just give it a try. Like try a couple days. Like I think that people will get like a little bit of clarity and they'll feel a little bit better, even if they just try something like this where they just eat meat and eggs for 2 or 3 days. I think that a lot of times some of that inflammation will go away. I know a lot of guy friends that have tried just even like a keto diet, but even something like just committing to meat and eggs and getting rid of everything else for like 2 days, they'll lose like 6 or 7 pounds. Now, that's not body fat, but why are you perpetually walking around with all this extra weight on your body? And I think it's because your body's kind of constantly inflamed, constantly bloated from the various foods that you're eating. So I think it can have a huge impact on people, even very quickly.
Yeah, I agree with that. And absolutely, there's a huge mental component to it. Depression, anxiety, bipolar. I'm amazed. I mean, fortunately, I didn't suffer that, but I think there's so much to be said for every body part, every organ system is affected by eating pretty much sugar, grains, and seed oils. Those are like the three. That's the trifecta that I say. If everybody eliminated at least that, but that's eliminating so much. I mean, that's Ritz crackers, Triscuits, potato chips. It's so much of what is.
Yeah, that's why sometimes I just say plants. Like ditch plants.
Hard to comprehend for people though, because plants are healthy, right? Remember that, Mark. Haven't you been brainwashed like everybody else? Gotta eat lots of fruits and vegetables and lean meat. And I'm doing the exact opposite. No fruits and vegetables and pretty much no lean meat. I mean, when I say no lean meat, I'm basically not eating boneless, skinless chicken breast.
What happens to you when you eat like leaner meat for you?
I just can tell my body just will instantly the next day crave a big fat ribeye with butter on it. and then that's what I'll have. But yeah, for the most part, I don't really bother so much buying chicken because it's just not as satiating. So, but that, like I said, it's just the point of how the message out there is to eat lean meat, lots of fruits and vegetables. And I'm basically doing the exact opposite and feeling better than I've ever felt in my life. So along with hundreds of thousands of other people, which it's exciting to me because 13 years ago, you got to remember, it wasn't even the whole keto thing going on back then, right? It was basically Atkins. People say, oh, you're doing the Atkins thing. Yeah, I tried that. It worked great. I lost weight, but then I put it all back on. Well, why? Because in Atkins, you climb back up the carb ladder, after you, drop your weight, and that puts people right back into their addiction. Then all of a sudden it's the ticket to go back and eat what you were eating.
That's a really good point because you kind of have along the way, even on an Atkins diet or even a modern keto diet, you still have those little snacky treats in there that have sweet flavors to them. And then so that makes sense when you discontinue not adhering exactly to the diet, that you're going to just fall right back into those same bad patterns.
Yeah, and I find there's so many people that have come to me for help that have come from this whole keto movement that I feel has gone astray in the monetization of it, and people also seeking to feed their addiction. Oh, we've got keto brownies. Oh, we've got keto cookies. Oh, we've got keto pancakes. Wow. All right.
That's not the point of keto.
Yeah. And so those people will end up finding that they're getting up off the couch to dig into the box of the keto dessert, and in my mind, they're just digging back into their addiction, and they're going to keep striving for that until you draw the line and you abstain from it. And that's I feel like I've sort of have cornered myself into a little bit of a niche with kind of pounding home that point. But I feel it's so important because there's so many people that just say, I'm doing great, but I'm just at a plateau, or I'm just not getting where I want to go. All right, well, here's the next step. You ready? Pull up your big girl pants. Suck it up, buttercup. We're done with the sugar. We're done with the sweeteners, and see what happens.
You hear that, Andrew?
I'm about to take another sip of my artificially sweetened coffee. I did want to ask, though, or actually just kind of I guess, spark the conversation, because you keep saying fructose, and I know like a lot of YouTubers that are like radars going off as we speak. But I did want to bring it up that it seems like you were talking about it negatively, because in your experience, one peach will lead to another one, that'll lead to another one, that'll lead to a Pop-Tart or something. I just don't want people to think like, oh, like she's 57, she's in amazing shape, she looks fantastic. She said fruit was bad, even though you didn't really say fruit is bad. So then they're going to be like, oh, okay, so I'm not going to eat fruit. But is there really like an issue if somebody's not willing to go all in on carnivore if they eat a big, awesome ribeye for dinner, and then for dessert they have a gigantic bowl of fruit and then call it a night?
You know, that can work for some people. And my point is really this. If, again, you're lean, you're off medication, you've got no diagnosis, and you're eating steak and a big bowl of fruit, all the more power to you. That's awesome, you know, and that type of person also might be really active. But if you go down the rabbit hole of fructose and fruit, and you will see scientists right on YouTube, and they'll discuss fructose and, you know, how any sugar that's metabolized in our bodies, whether it's from carrots or a mango, it has detrimental effects. So, again, if you're healthy and
I mean, like, I'm curious about that. Wouldn't that be the dosage of fruit? Like, if we're thinking about the amount of fruit that people are going to eat each night, it's not going to
Be equivalent of like a soda.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I wouldn't assume it would be that much that it would like lead individuals into like to dealing with cancer and to that extent. You know what I mean? We're just trying to like find a middle ground here, because like carnivore is great. There are certain days where I only eat meat too. But when people are talking about these different diets, when people are flaming on individuals that do carnivore, it's like they say plants are, the plants don't want to be eaten, or fruits are bad for you,
and so forth.
Yeah.
And if an individual does the big things, processed food, get that out of your diet, don't be snacking all the time so that you don't get in all these excess calories. If you have a little bit of fruit and you eat some fucking spinach, like long run, I don't see if an individual can handle that. It doesn't seem that that's going to be the thing that doesn't allow them to stick to the diet. Like, I'm curious, since you've worked with so many individuals who are carnivore, and who have, like you've said, like they've opened Pandora's box, maybe ate some things that led them back into bad eating habits. What are the typical things that leads people back into having bad eating habits? Is it having some fruit, or is it trying to reintroduce processed foods that are highly palatable and that they can tend to overeat? What are the big movers for most people that you work with?
yeah, well, it's whatever trigger that sends you down the slippery slope. And for different people, it's different things.
Yeah.
And for some people, it absolutely is fruit. It's just simply having that juicy, sweet apple, which you got to remember, ancestrally, these apples were really tart crab apples, and we've genetically modified our fruits into being these big sugar bombs. I mean, grapes, watermelons, cantaloupes, bananas
too, I think,
everything. I mean, if you actually look up what fruit has been through the ages, it was a lot of it inedible, and certainly not the level of sugar. But yeah, if somebody's eating a little bit of spinach and a little bit of fruit and all the other, their health parameters are great, then that's awesome. It doesn't have to be full bore, hardcore carnivore for everybody. I just think that,
But in your belief system, I think, like at your roots, it seems like you're under the impression from data and from things that you've seen that plants are not great for us.
Yes, absolutely. That is totally my thought process.
And you think that maybe people can have some wiggle room in terms of their overall health if they're exercising and not having any sort of things, but you still think it's kind of bullshit for people
to have a spinach salad or a spinach smoothie, or to eat kale. Yeah, I look at people eating kale in a restaurant and I go, man, do I feel sorry for you?
That's disgusting.
Do you realize that's not really healthy, but you think it is, and you're just putting up with it?
That's a big disaster, especially because of how much oil they're putting on there and everything. But I think what's at the heart of some of the stuff that you're saying is that, for you personally, you going this deep into it has really made a difference. And I also think it's maybe your personal belief. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe your personal belief that there is kind of a way for human beings to eat. And it's primarily off of meat and eggs and organs and things like that.
And seafood, yeah.
Like that's probably your main thing that I see you talk about so much on your Instagram and stuff.
Yeah, and mainly because I've seen it heal so many people, and I've seen people drop weight, get off medications, and relieve themselves of anxiety and depression. There's just, there's just no way around that. The thought for me that this isn't the healthiest way to nourish our bodies. I mean, I feel it's the optimal human diet.
You want people to get distance. I'm sorry to keep interrupting you, but you want people to, I'm just trying to get a good picture of this. You want people to distance themselves away from being ruled by food.
Absolutely. And that's one of the key things is changing your relationship with food. It's not entertainment. If you're eating because you're bored, you're stressed, you're lonely, you're angry, you're using food. And it's totally not, the way naturally we should be eating to hunger and then moving on with your life. And I tell people, you got to be cautious of cross addiction. You come off sugar and carbs and processed foods, you got to be cautious. What are you then relieving yourself with? And then we'll go, I know I've researched your podcast a little bit. It's like people can turn to porn, people can turn to gambling, people
don't know the internet can be used for other things other than porn.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they don't know. They're like, wow, would you look at that? You can research stuff.
Wow, you can learn about carnivore.
I'm curious, before you started Carnivore, when you was food something that you used as a crutch for things, like when you were angry or sad or whatever? Did you have bad habits when it came to turning to food? And then when you changed and you started eating differently, what else changed? I'm asking this because some people, it's not just that they're eating a lot of calories. It's that when they get stressed, food is the thing that they turn to. Processed foods is the thing that they turn to. And you can't just change your diet. You need to change how you handle your stressors and what you do when you get into bad situations as far as the way you feel. It can't always be food that you turn to.
Yeah, and there is something to this whole thing with the dopamine and getting, your brain kind of fires up when you are taking in these substances, and to the extent where you're not really even thinking that, but it's happening. And we're always striving for that dopamine hit. I mean, I don't know if you go into the Huberman and you listen to a bunch of his stuff, and it's fascinating. And yeah, so what do we turn to for those dopamine hits? I mean, I get a dopamine hit when I'm doing my treadmill dancing or when I'm lifting, and then when I get home and I feel like, wow, I feel stronger. I feel like I'm getting my body to look toned. That excites me. You have to start feeding off of something else that you get pleasure and enjoyment out of.
I like that.
It's and I tell people you can either get into meditation. I mean, you can go down the wrong rabbit hole too. With I see people turning to these triathlons, and you get addicted to exercise. People can go crazy with that stuff. And I challenged myself to. I'd never have been a runner my whole life, and as a carnivore, I ran 4 half marathons.
Wow.
On ribeye and bacon. That's what everybody's like. You got to carb load the night before. No, you don't. And then I was driven to say, I've never ever run a race. My first race was a half marathon. The night before, I ate a big ribeye. I didn't eat anything in the morning and ran. And I was just I set a goal for myself to try to do it in sub 2, because that's a big thing in the running world, to do sub 2 for a half marathon. And the day before, I went and got my number. I'm trying to figure this whole thing out. You get your little number, and my number was 1599. I ran the race in an hour and 59 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I did my sub 2.
That's awesome.
And so it's setting goals for yourself. It's setting the bar really high, and just getting an enjoyment out of striving to reach a goal.
Also, right now, I'm curious about this too. You mentioned a little bit that you don't eat all throughout the day. Like even before your marathon, you didn't eat at breakfast. So how has the way you eat been adjusted and changed because of what you eat? How's your appetite? Like, did you eat this morning? You know?
No, I didn't. So in a very interesting, natural way, I find most people who turn to this and stick with it, it evolves into either 2 meals a day or even 1 meal a day. And they call it OMAD, one meal a day. And I think because fatty meat is so satiating, I feel like I can go 7-8 hours without even thinking about food. Yeah. So if I'm not hungry in the morning, I just don't eat, and then if I'm busy and I'm running errands and then I'm off to the gym and then I get home and it's 2 or 3 o'clock, I eat a big ass meal and then that's it for the day. I'm not eating again at 8 or 9 at night, and I also try to limit and not eat past about 5, 6 o'clock just because I feel it's just better for our digestion not to fall asleep with a full stomach. So yeah, it's really, I can say I can't even remember the last time I ate 3 meals. Like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Just doesn't. I mean, there's just not enough hours in the day with a big enough gap for when I would be hungry. So
there's not easy transitions. Like if let's just say hypothetically that you're really hungry after this podcast, but we wanted to like work out. It's like, it doesn't make sense to sit down and eat, a bunch of eggs and meat. Like you have to wait X amount of hours to even exercise again.
And what's really interesting though is, like, let's say we're going to work out after this and maybe I'm at the point where I could eat if there was a steak in front of me, but I could easily not eat and be totally fine. You don't get those insulin spikes and drops where you get that hangry feeling where like, I gotta eat. If there's a point where I'm like, yeah, I could eat, I could go 2 or 3 more hours and still be okay and function fine.
It's just a little bit like maturing. Like you don't have to punch someone in the face just because they said something rude to you. As you get older, you kind of learn like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, Nsima.
You get hungry, you can you don't have to always act on it right away.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a very, very calm sort of steady state that you're not on any sort of real major highs and lows of having to get yourself fed.
How did you find this? Because like it's, the carnivore diet is like sexy nowadays. Joe Rogan talks about it. We got Sean Baker out there and some other people talking about the carnivore diet. But how did you discover it? Because you discovered it for yourself a long time ago.
Yeah, well, I, for years and years and years, kept trying to find the answer to the horrible hellhole I was in with, the food addiction and the binge eating. And I just so fortunate happened upon doing a web surfing, zeroing in on health. It was a forum that Charles Washington started. It was a group that kind of branched off of a low carb forum that they were on because this group was like, yeah, we don't need any carbs because as soon as we introduce the carbs, our weight starts going back up. And they just kind of became a group and, happened upon them and saw people writing in there about it relieving them of, binge eating and weight loss and getting rid of arthritis and getting them off diabetic medications. And
did you find other women that were doing it too?
Yeah, and that's actually what there was 2 women there in there in particular who had resolved themselves of their eating disorders, and I said, I'm all in. Started the next day, and then my whole journey in this has evolved so much because I've been an eye doctor for 30 years, and I've seen so many people losing their vision from macular degeneration and diabetic retinopathy that this has also become like a side passion of mine to let these diabetics know you can reverse your diabetes. You know, you don't have to be diabetic the rest of your life. You can get off medication. You have the power to do it, and you just have to be motivated, and you have to have your why. And this is a pretty big why. I'm going to show you the bleeding that you have in the back of your eye here, and I'm shocked. Some people are just so grateful and jump in, and they take the, I tell them to go read this book and watch these YouTube videos, and they come back 6 months later, 40 pounds down, and they literally hug me with tears in their eyes. And it's just an amazingly rewarding experience for me, instead of being someone who's just monitoring the bleeding in your eye every 6 months, where I can actually help you. And macular degeneration, it's so prominent. It's like, it's crazy. When I was in practice 30 years ago, I totally have noticed a difference now compared to then in the amount of macular degeneration.
A lot of this has to do with our technology, you think, and the screens? And
No. It has to do with realistically just more and more processed food and more ill health in people, because they're told the wrong thing. They're told to eat fruits and vegetables and lean meat. And along with that, they eat the chips and the ice cream and
Why does diabetes impact the eyes?
Well, diabetes is actually a disease of small blood vessels. So it impacts so many things: the nerves, your kidneys, your eyes. It causes neovascularization, which is tiny little new capillaries grow to try to give more oxygen to the area, and then they leak and they bleed, and that causes loss of vision. And macular degeneration, that is totally preventable, and you can halt the progression of it. I'm not so sure in the end stage scarring of the macular degeneration where people get geographic atrophy, if that's reversible. I mean, that's kind of too little too late, but if Dr. Chris Kenobi, an ophthalmologist, did so much research and basically has come to the conclusion that it is the seed oils in our diet. So it really comes down to, again, eliminate sugar, grains, and all processed foods / seed oils, and it will be a remarkable improvement in people's health. That's why I'm not here to be the carnivore Gestapo and say you gotta go full bore, but I'm fully on saying that if people at least eliminated those three things, that there'd be a dramatic improvement in their health.
Do you have little things that maybe some people can do to help reverse their eyes aging maybe a little bit? Or is there something that younger folks should practice so they don't lose some of their vision?
Yeah, it really comes down to diet. How you eat and what you put in your mouth is everything to every organ system. Your skin. I mean, I used to have adult acne. I actually have before pictures that I can give you if you want to tag them onto the video here. Of I had like it's just incredible how much it impacts your skin.
It seems to be a big one with the carnivore diet.
Yeah,
skin
between eczema,
issues.
psoriasis, acne, but that's just one organ system, right? It's everything. It's your eyes. I think it will slow the process of cataract formation. I think it really, and it dramatically helps dry eye. So many people suffer from dry eye conditions because I feel the inflammation in our bodies, it goes to every organ system, and that inflammation comes from sugars, grains, seed oils, and a lot of people, plant toxins. It has an impact. And people say, well, will my glaucoma get better? Yeah, I'm going to tell you, everything will get better. You clean up your diet, you eat the way man was intended to eat for millions of years. Trust me, everything, if you're patient enough, you give it long enough, it will improve. And I say it's not a quick fix. I say you've been eating crap for 30, 40, 50 years, depending on how old the person is. So you're not gonna right the ship in 30 days. But do it long enough and start start really paying attention to bit by bit what's improving in in every different aspect of your life, both mental and physical, and that's the driving force to keep going, you know.
I know you're enjoying this clip, but listen up. We have this beef company, Piedmontese Beef, that no matter what diet you're doing, whether it's low fat, high fat, carnivore, keto, whatever, they have perfect cuts that are going to fit your diet perfectly. And the cool thing, Andrew, less connective tissue, so you're not going to have those gristly, nasty things that you have to spit out when you eat beef.
That's what those are?
That's what those are.
Oh, and Piedmontese doesn't have that.
They don't have that because the cows are jacked, lack of connective tissue, buttery when you cut into it. Amazing taste. So, Andrew, how can they get some Piedmontese?
Yes, sir. It's over at Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. At checkout, enter promo code POWER for 25% off your order. And if your order is $150 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Again, that's at Piedmontese.com, promo code POWER. Let's go ahead and get back to this podcast.
What would you say is the big problem with seed oils? Because we've brought people onto the podcast who have mentioned how seed oils aren't a big deal. There was debate that we had between two people about, one was like, it's not a big deal. One was like, it matters a bit. My personal thing is like, I just don't, because I don't need, it's like there are easy alternatives to seed oils. I don't really care, but there are easy alternatives. But in your opinion, and from what you've seen, like, why are seed oils something that people really should be thinking about?
Well, the first thing, if somebody's even like questioning it, you go on YouTube and you actually watch how they produce seed oils with hexane that goes through like a 13-stage process with chemicals to try to get it to not smell nasty and look nasty. Okay, because this stuff is cloudy and smells, so they put it through lots of chemical processes. This stuff absorbs into our bodies. It's fat. It absorbs, our cell walls are made of fat. It absorbs into it, causes inflammation. The half-life now, I've looked at different studies and seen between 2 years and 4 years a half-life. That means if you stopped eating every single possible speck of seed oil that, you know, is in your current diet, you stop today, potentially 4 years from now, only half of what's in your body will clear out. Another 4 years, another half of that. So
would that be true of healthy stuff as well, or no?
What do you mean healthy stuff?
Well, just you're saying that I guess there'll be remnants of the seed oils 2, 3 years, 4 years later. What about omega-3 fatty acids?
Or like butter. Yeah, well,
I don't know. They rotate in and out quicker or something.
But they're not inflammatory. So like butter from a cow is a natural. Yeah, it's the way these seed oils are is that they
sit around and they cause problems.
Yeah, and it's not just a matter of the oil being so many calories and you're going to gain weight because you're not burning the calories. This stuff is toxic to our bodies. I mean, I encourage anybody who's even questioning it, go on and watch there's some really powerful videos explaining the deleterious effects of the seed oils in our bodies. And you can see clearly, like 1910 when they were introduced, and we were encouraged to eat margarine and not butter, and there's Crisco, and you know it became, and it exponentially starts coming into our diet, and our society has just gotten sicker and fatter, and it's think about the rate of Alzheimer's. Even like when I was a kid, I didn't hear about Alzheimer's, never heard of that. Right now, it's like, you know, it's so common. Stroke, so many diseases. It's, you know, and the word is not going to get out because these big, huge food companies are making billions and billions of dollars off of selling this garbage, and they use it because it's cheap and because it increases the shelf life. So it's all about the profit, and you can't get somebody to come on to a news network to talk about getting this out of, because they're all sponsored by the food company, and the pharmaceutical company loves it because that's why people are sick and they're buying all the medication. So it's one of those things where I feel like eventually the more people talk about it and more people listen to podcasts like this and start looking into it and stop eating that stuff, that's the way people are going to take control of their own health.
I think some people listening are like, I don't think I even eat seed oil. but they don't know that
it's interesting you say that because
processed food. I call it restaurant oil, just so it resonates with people a little bit better. I'm like, if you eat at a restaurant, you're eating seed oils.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because that's exactly what happens when I say that same thing. People say, "Oh, well, yeah, I don't buy that. I don't cook with that." So they're just thinking they don't buy the big jug of Mazola corn oil and they don't cook with it. And I say, "All right, that's well and good, but it's in everything." I said, "You pick up any bag, box, bottle, or jar in your pantry right now or your fridge, I guarantee you 90% of it's going to have canola oil, palm oil, cottonseed oil, you name it. It's going to have it in it. Do you use mayonnaise? Do you eat Triscuits? A loaf of bread? Salad dressing?
I don't get mayonnaise either.
Me
I don't understand it.
Yeah, but sometimes mayonnaise is a base for other stuff.
Yeah, and people
we'll
tuna
keep it as a
salad,
base.
chicken salad.
A base for stuff that doesn't taste very good.
No, but like when you go to sushi, like the rolls that everyone gets, they basically have mayonnaise all over.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and well, so
Just
that
mayo is the base.
that's interesting too when you say that, when you said it's the restaurant oil. So it's everything. It's, calamari's fried in it, French fries, pretty much everything. And then they've got a squirt bottle of it and it's squirted. You go to an omelet station at a posh hotel, they squirt. I go, no, don't put the oil in my pan, please. Just
They
butter.
do it before you can say anything a lot
Yeah,
of
then
times.
guys wiping it out. I go, you can do butter. Really? You can use butter? Yeah, you can use butter. Get that oil out. But aside from that, you're exactly right though. Aside from the deep fryer, any sauce, any burger you order, it's got the buffalo sauce. It's all going to be like a canola oil base. It's all that seed oil. So yeah, it's tough eating out at a restaurant. It's like, give me a grilled steak. Don't put oil on it.
When you that's something good.
And they do pour oil all over your steak. Like they do at most places. You have to like ask them not to.
I say now, I'm allergic to oil. Please make sure they do not put any oil in there. And I said, you can use as much butter as you want, but please, I cannot have any oil. And so I've actually, because I spent a couple months in Florida recently, I started sort of incognito recording myself ordering at restaurants, and I'm going to put a whole YouTube video together of how I order and what I tell them. And it's important. If people eat out a lot, they're gonna get seed oils.
I ordered chicken, salmon, and steak the other day at a restaurant because it was like these 3 entrees, and I was like, that's perfect. Like I'll get all 3 of those. And then when I went to order it, the woman was so confused, and I was like, just pretend that I got like 2 other people here and you're taking these 2 separate orders.
And just shove it on one plate, please.
And then she's like, but then what do I do with the vegetables? I said, you can do whatever you like with them. You can share them with somebody in the back. I don't know.
Hook them up. The next customer up.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not going to probably eat them. So yeah.
Yeah. What
does make
about
a
the old fiber? Because even going back to fructose, with fruits and vegetables, which I am curious about fruit being modified. Did the fiber also get modified to where it's like way overblown? But like with fructose, it's in an apple or whatever, usually gets delivered with the fiber and stuff. And so in my head, that's how I like justify everything. But for yourself, I'm sure you get this a lot when it comes to fiber. Like, aren't you? You're never going to the bathroom, right? Like, how does that work?
Exactly. Yeah, I don't go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's I answered that a lot with just telling people. I said, if you're really interested about this fiber thing, there's a great book called Fiber Menace, and it really explains how fiber is not natural to our bodies. It's actually abrasive to our colons, and we don't need a speck of fiber. I have not eaten fiber in 13 years. I go to the bathroom just splendidly, and I actually feel like the undigestible cellulose that's in the plant and fruit matter is not healthy for us. So I know it's bizarre, and people have a hard time wrapping their brain around hearing that, because we are told have whole grains, lots of fiber, and just think about how many things that we are told that we should actually be doing the exact opposite, and this is one of them.
I know it sounds ridiculous, but do you think there was maybe this excitement over trying to convince people to eat more fiber is because people do eat so poorly already? It's like, because you eat poorly, let's use this thing to, kind of shuttle stuff out of the system with.
Mm-hmm.
I know it sounds like crazy, but that's maybe that's where it came from. I don't know.
I don't know. I think there actually is, the message out there that you need a lot of fiber for a healthy gut and a healthy colon, and then there's the whole thing about, get your colonoscopy, and that without fiber you can't possibly have a healthy colon. And it's, I'm just under the from all the research I've done and living 13 years without a speck of fiber, and feeling great and not on any meds and got healthy teeth, healthy hair, healthy eyes. It's just an indication that there isn't a dietary need for fiber.
It is very interesting because whenever people talk about the lack of fiber, they're always like, okay, let's look at what happens to people long term. Because this is something that people have been talking about more recently. So when we, like individuals like maybe Lane Norton, I've heard him mention multiple times, well, we don't know what the long-term deleterious effects are. That's why I choose to keep a minimum amount of fiber in my diet. But it's good to see that like you and probably other people that you work with or have been dealing with haven't had any sort of issues or health scares because they've gotten rid of fiber in their diet.
Yeah, none whatsoever. And I'm not the longest carnivore out here. I mean, there's people doing this 20, 30, and 40 years. So, I kind of like probably one of the more OG people in the carnivore world, because there's not that many that have been doing it this long. But I don't know of any of us who have, any sort of digestive issues or, colon problems. I keep going back to ancestral man. I mean, and the Eskimos up in the Antarctic, they don't have any access to vegetation. They're eating, seal blubber, whale blubber, fish. They don't have any fiber. They're not up there all dying off of colon cancer, And again, man, for millions of years, the majority of what they did was hunted and ate the fatty meat and organs, and they weren't living on, if, in time of famine, they might try to find some tuber and eat it, but we're not extinct from, colon problems. So,
it also didn't used to be a bonus to like eat something and have it not really have a net positive effect on you. If you eat vegetables, they're just like, they don't have hardly any calories in them. So modern man found vegetables to be great because we're like, oh, we can fill up on these. And we're not going to gain body fat. But a caveman would be like, I want to get bigger. Like I need to get bigger this time of year, every year.
Nutrient dense food.
There's more animals around. I'm going to eat them because I'm fucking hungry.
Right.
And I need this energy to get, to be able to walk and move and hunt and do all the things.
Right. And people don't realize that there's really not that much bioavailability of the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients that are in the vegetables. There's so much more absorbed through meat.
Right.
It's just such a highly nutritious thing to eat compared to fruit and vegetable.
Has anybody gone to you or anybody else that's been around for a long time doing this diet? Has anyone asked to try to study you guys?
I think, Sean Baker was doing a fundraiser because it really costs $2 million to do an adequate study. So there was a Harvard study that was done recently. There was, so Sean is, I know, working on a study that's going to be done. Because you got to think about this. Who's going to fund that study?
Right.
The food industry is not funding it. The pharmaceutical industry is not funding it because you're not making any money on telling people to eat meat, seafood, and eggs and get healthy. So there's a tough one there because everybody wants to see the study. But I'll let anybody study me all they want. If, I've done blood work. My blood work's fine. My triglycerides are perfect. My thyroid's fine.
And your body, as far as you know, you're not missing anything.
Not missing anything.
Everything seems to be good with your blood work. And
my libido's good too. Did you want to go there?
Well, we already heard you on the way in.
You got to be careful about letting anybody do anything to your body.
Hey,
'cause, you know.
what about your cholesterol?
There you
That's
go.
got to be shitty, right? Your triglycerides got to be through the roof.
Yeah, that's the common question. And here, there the thing too is we're brainwashed to think your cholesterol's got to be like under 200 or 210. I forget where the cutoff is now, but they keep trying to lower the cutoff so they can put more and more people on statins. And I just go back to this Dr. Anthony J. He did a lot of research on cholesterol, and he has this graphic out that shows the lowest death rate in humans, the lowest, is a range of total cholesterol from 180 to 280 is where your lowest death rate is. So even a cholesterol at 270, you are in the lowest death rate. It doesn't rise until like 290 and above. And my total cholesterol, it varies obviously from the moment, from moment to moment. But it, I think it was 220 the last time I tested it. And then I actually have a 4 or 6, blood glucose ketone monitor that I can also do my total cholesterol. And last week I did that and it was 200. It's perfect. My triglycerides are like 35. The ratio is perfect. There is nothing after 13 years of mainly eating red meat that has caused my heart to be at risk of, having a heart attack at this point. So I get it. That's the most common question because that's what we're taught through everything. We're just totally told you got to have low cholesterol. LDL, I mean, every cell in our body needs cholesterol. We need cholesterol to convert sunlight into vitamin D. We need cholesterol for our sex hormones. There we are back with the sex. We need cholesterol for so many processes in our body. It's not the bad guy. It's an entity that a company is making billions of dollars off of, and it's just a really sad state of affairs. And here's the other thing too: who's to say what normal cholesterol and triglycerides should be in ancestral man who's only eating meat? Is it the same as what they're saying that we need? What's the high limit of the range and the low limit? There's so much that's involved in trying to figure that whole thing out. But there's so much information out there, and I just laugh when people say you can't possibly think that's healthy. You're going to die of a heart attack, and I'll say, oh, I'm going to have fun trying because I see nothing in any of my blood work that indicates that. So onward I go.
Yeah. Without getting into the debate of whether or not we should be living longer or if we're living better lives in early ages, are we in fact living longer though with all of the processed foods? Because when you bring up like ancestral man, lifespan was way different back then for various reasons, right? But with that in mind, like, are we living longer now with all this extra food as opposed to back then when all we ate was meat?
Yeah, so definitely. Well, and then here's the thing: if you're living to 75 or 80, but your last 15 years you're sitting on the couch obese and popping medication out of your little Monday through Sunday pill box, like, where's your quality of life?
And from what I'm seeing, people are starting that at around 40 years old.
It's
with my age and people around me, I see that happening earlier and earlier to people.
Yeah, I see it because, patients are sitting in my chair and their chart's pulled up, and right on the side is their list of medications. And I'm just in shock at, like you said, people in their 40s on a list of medications already. So in answer to the part of your question about, the lifespan of man back then was so much younger, shorter. You got to remember that you have to calculate in death at childbirth, death of mothers of childbearing years, because there's a lot of difficulty without our medical, advancement with that whole aspect of it. But there was a certain death rate of, kids before the age of 5 and women in childbirth. So that really skews when you have a stillbirth. There, you're entering an age of 0 in there, and that really skews the lifespan statistics. That's what, through the research that I've done. But there's really nothing that's, I'm still an N=1 experiment for myself. I did not take this lightly. I say to people, I say, I'm a medical professional here. I didn't just decide to do this wacky diet and not take it seriously. There's cardiologists that are eating this way now, a number of them, physicians. Sean Baker's an orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Chafee, he's a neurosurgeon. These are smart people. I'll include myself in the category of a smart person. I'm not eating this way for kicks and giggles. I've actually really feel and through keeping an open mind and continuing to do research. I mean, there's no answer out there. We don't know what's the diet for, and for the longest life and the healthiest life. But I sure as heck feel I'm on the path to it from compared to where I was before, and all the evidence of people that I've seen changing their lives with this, that there's really something to it.
Yeah, I'll take the words out of Mark's mouth. Is he says like people aren't living longer, they're just dying longer, right? We're keeping them around with medications and that sort of thing. So you're right, quality of life is...
It's a sick care system. It's not a health care system. It's like, get the diagnosis, get the symptoms, make the diagnosis, and hand out the pills. That's really...
I want to say, I think it's in the Bible, it says that people will live to about 76 years old, and that hasn't changed. I mean, the Bible's pretty old from what I've heard.
I've heard stats now that if we didn't have all of this garbage in our food system, and we have the medical technology that we have, that the lifespan should be about 120 right about now. So
it makes sense that we'd have real progress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about do you mess with any organ meats? Like, do you force yourself to eat liver or anything like that? Or I don't know, maybe you like liver. I know Nsima,
testicles.
Nsima likes liver, but yeah, do you do any of the other than steak type meats?
Yeah, you know what? I very much dislike liver, so I'm not on board with forcing myself to eat that. I don't take any supplements. It's the same thing. I just keep going back to keeping it simple. I don't feel like I need to to start eating desiccated brains. And mainly because after 13 years of doing this, I feel amazing and I'm healthy. So do I think that there's a benefit to it? Absolutely think that it's nutritious and that there is, a nutritional benefit to it. I'm not going to go out and eat thymus and spleen and
Some
kidney.
people think that if you do a carnivore diet and you only eat the muscle meat, that you do need supplements, and so you found something different.
Yeah, well, and I answer with why, and the interesting thing too is nobody gave a crap whether I ate liver or not when I was also eating Doritos and Twinkies. Nobody questioned it, right? And you don't even think about it. Now all of a sudden you clean up your diet and you're eating this healthy meat, seafood, and eggs, right? Now all of a sudden people are freaking out. What do you mean you don't eat organs, right? And now
So
people
good.
care that whether I'm eating organs or not, but the rest of my life they didn't give a crap. So that's kind of interesting. But you know what? There is a company that puts out a kind of like a seasoning spice mix that has raw desiccated pancreas, liver, spleen, and heart and kidney in it. It's called Pluck. I happen to love it. It tastes great. I put it on my eggs. I put it in, I might basically, I sprinkle it on different things that I might be cooking. And I feel like, hey, all right, so there's my organs.
Yeah. It's so funny. This is a whole nother level, but when it comes to the carnivore diet, Chris Bell, he said it on our podcast. He's like, you can eat a hamburger and nobody cares, but you take the bun off and all of a sudden it's going to kill you. It's funny how, like, you know, the deeper you get into it now, it's like, oh, you are carnivore. Oh, you're not getting your organ meats though. Do you ever concern yourself with I mean, you get enough protein for sure, but what about like getting in enough fats or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't really worry about that, and I'm not so much paying attention to that because I just naturally in a ribeye, a New York strip, ground beef, there's plenty of fat. You know, the far extreme is, you know, a rabbit starvation, which is basically if you eat really lean. If somebody's trying to do this and say you know, I've had people come to me and say, I really don't like meat. The only thing I eat is, you know, chicken and fish. I'm like, it's going to be a little tough. You know, you really need to have a little more variety. And, but I think in general, people just eat the meat they can afford and that they like. You're totally fine with not having to really monitor and pay attention to the fat count.
I was curious about earlier in the episode, you mentioned eating disorders, and you mentioned having worked with individuals who had eating disorders and a lot of women talking about that. Now, when it comes to carnivore, a lot of individuals, especially with your eating pattern, nowadays, people that do fasting, people are looking at that as an eating disorder, which is interesting. But like the way you eat, how have you seen it help individuals who have different type of eating disorders since you mentioned that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I have read and seen and heard in many different instances where people will say, this is not a diet for people with eating disorders. This is, you know, it's too restrictive. It causes its own eating disorder. I've heard so many different things. And to that I say, this is basically totally cured me of mine.
And what was yours?
Well, it was basically binge eating, bulimia, you name it. I had a touch of anorexia back in high school too. So, you know, eating disorders, there's a whole array of eating disorders. I've even heard lately there's one called a volume eating disorder. But you know, it's so interesting to call this restrictive because, yes, from the outside in listening, like, wow, this is restrictive. I mean, listen, lady, all you eat is meat, seafood, and eggs, and you're not thinking that's restrictive. You know what? That's what was on earth for us to eat for millions of years. Did you think those people felt restricted? Right?
They were grateful, probably.
Grateful.
Like, yeah.
They're hungry. They got to, you know, to get the animal and eat it. And so it's really kind of I cringe when I hear that, and I also I've heard so many failures of people with eating disorders going into like in an inpatient treatment, and they were literally forced to sit there with a cupcake in front of them, and they could not get up until they ate it. You know, like different things like that I have heard on a number of different occasions of how they attempt to treat it. And the everything in moderation just absolutely does not work for me. You know, I've seen it over and over, and I've helped so many people out of their misery by abstaining and making people realize it's no different. You can't, you know, a heroin addict can't just shoot up a tiny bit on the weekend. You know, you don't give an alcohol, here, have a half a shot. You know, you can do that once a week. Don't be too restrictive, right? That's just too restrictive, not having any alcohol, right? Right? But is it restrictive saying don't eat sugar or don't eat grains and don't eat processed food? Well, from the outside, yeah, it looks a little restrictive, but realistically, we're not putting in our body a substance that we're addicted to.
So I'm curious because, like, if somebody has anorexia, let's say, right, and they're really restricting the amount of food that they eat, have you ever worked with anyone with anorexia? I personally once, but is your solution to them eating real food, getting rid of processed food, and learning how to just eat real food? Is that the big thing there? Or
yeah, anorexia is a really a different entity, and there's a different issue going on with that particular eating disorder. So to that, I can't really answer whether, that there's a whole psychology behind that. And that's that. But I do know of some anorexics who have cured themselves through eating this way too. So that's a little bit more complicated though, that particular eating disorder.
And then also when it comes to the like fasting, right now, even on like TikTok, right? And even on YouTube to an extent, you have to, when they're not allowing individuals to really talk openly about utilizing fasting as a diet methodology, because certain groups look at fasting as it'll increase the amount of individuals who end up having eating disorders. So how do you talk to individuals about that safely? Because I honestly don't think it's too crazy just not to eat for part of the day. But a lot of individuals, even professionals in the field, when they hear individuals talk about fasting, they're like, they're treating it as if it's some sort of disordered eating.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, and depends on whether you're talking about intermittent fasting or extended fasting. Yeah. They're really different things. But it's such a natural thing to, just not eat in between dinner the night before. And, so really from dinner the night before till breakfast, that's about a 14-hour fast. Now, are you intermittent fasting? And what if you're not hungry when you get up? I say, if you're not hungry, don't eat. And you wait until lunch. Okay, now I've got an 18-hour fast. Whoa. Now is there a problem with that? That's why I find it so interesting to to talk about how something that's so natural to a human through evolution is now considered something detrimental. I think
you mentioned running.
Yeah.
The average person right now, if they were to pop out of their house right now and run, they'd probably get hurt.
Yeah.
That's a natural thing. You should have access to that. You should be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So the whole, I think there really are some great health benefits to fasting. You start looking into the autophagy, and I just think that it's so beneficial, and I hate to hear when I didn't even realize they were limiting fasting TikToks.
And if you think about it from a logical standpoint, as you mentioned, like you'll be sleeping during most of this time. It's probably not a great idea to eat a lot of food a few hours before bed. So you got the 2 hours there. Hopefully you slept for about 7-8 hours. Then maybe you have about 2 hours in the morning, maybe where you didn't eat. And really all you're talking about is like maybe for somebody to go 3 to 5 hours, waking hours,
right,
without food. And I know it's an extended period from their last meal, but the energy system of the body allows you to do that quite well.
Yeah, I mean, you can easily go 7 days without eating. So, some people can't, literally can't even do an 18-hour or a 24-hour fast. Going from, let's say, lunch one day to lunch the next day is really not easy for the average person because of blood sugar spikes.
Do you even bother to recommend that to people, intermittent fasting, or you end up intermittently fasting because you eat a giant thing of protein and fat, right?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I tend to at least initially let people just let their appetite naturally evolve with this, and I have always found that people tend to naturally switch to just twice a day anyway. And then, I might use it as a tool in the toolbox for somebody who's, let's say, done this for 6 months. They've lost 20, 30 pounds, and now they're at a plateau. And I'll say, well, you know what? Let's shorten up your eating window and see if that has an effect. Get your ketones and, change things up. And, I use it like that. But I find a lot of people actually will end up just enjoying doing OMAD every day. And they just I only got to cook once, eat once, clean up once. It's simple, and it works really well for, maintaining a lean body mass.
How do you maintain this tan? Where do you live at?
Well, I live on the beach in New Jersey, and then I just was fortunate enough to be in between positions as an eye doctor, and I spent 2 months down in Florida. And then I got to fly out to California. So
It's awesome.
and the sun is really, really healthy and really important. And it's interesting now as an eye doctor, I'm telling people don't wear sunglasses. Let the sun actually get into your eyes. It actually triggers a lot of electrical impulses, and it recharges the mitochondria. There's so much benefit to the sun, and that, aside from the whole vitamin D that everybody knows about, it actually does a lot more than just that. So it's really important. It's getting outside, and I love how you're out there showing the 10-minute walks. It's like, get outside. We're so we're so used to just being indoors so much, and that so many people actually don't really get outside. That it's I love the get out and do the walks and get fresh air and get the sunshine in your eyes and on your body.
But you're going to get skin cancer being in the sun.
Of course.
What are you doing out there?
Yeah. So to that I say, if you are eating sugar, grains, and seed oils, yes, you should just sit inside with a hat on. Because that's actually what causes, skin cancers and having that inflammation, not the sun. I mean, man, for millions of years out there hunting on the savannah, out in the sun, we weren't slathering on that toxic sunscreen, and they weren't dying off of melanoma. And the majority of melanomas are in spots where the sun doesn't even hit. So, I'm a firm believer, and I could be eating my words one day, because I do spend a lot of time out in the sun, because it really, I think for both mental and physical reasons, we need to be outside. And then there's the whole thing with grounding, walking barefoot, and, it's so interesting. I say, once you come into this, I'll call it the biohacking world, but for me, it was when, you come into this carnivore world, and then it's one thing after another. It's like peeling off the layers of the onion, and then it's, running backward, and it's getting all the plastics out, and only storing your stuff in glass. And then it's, doing this grounding thing, and then shutting your Wi-Fi off at night. And, you name it. It's like one thing after another. You could just keep going on and on. But we live in such an artificial, environment, and we really need to, not that we need to go live in a cave, but it might be cool to do.
How was your meetup?
It was awesome. So yesterday here in Sacramento, I hosted a meetup. I announced to my followers if anybody's in the area, and I had people drive in from Fresno and San Francisco, and we had about a dozen of us that sat around at a Rodizio, churrascaria, Brazilian steakhouse place, and they invited us over to the salad bar, and we all declined and turned our little cards over to the green side and had the meat parade come by. And there's just something so empowering. I love these meetups. That was the 15th one that I've hosted, and
that's great.
I try to host one wherever I go. There. And it's just
Look how happy everybody is.
Yeah,
Look at that,
and
though.
You know what? It's really you walk away from it feeling just like, how you said, it's empowering to take control of that aspect of your life, to say, I'm doing this to get healthy, and I'm feeling better, and to be around other people that are like-minded and other people who are flying their freak flag together. It's just really pretty cool.
I get it. People think you're crazy, but you're really just on the other side.
Yeah, there's some
that's all.
chicken hearts. See there, I got my organs.
Oh,
There
nice.
you go.
Those are good.
Yeah. Tastes like chicken. That's what I said.
That's awesome. Dang, I should have picked a weird day to fast. Okay. Because now I'm looking at this stuff.
Yeah, right. How did some of this lifting stuff come into play? Because you haven't been. I don't think previously you were lifting until maybe about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I kind of I got I got serious about it a couple of years ago when I, again, peeling back the layers of the onion and realizing that you really need to do weight-bearing exercise to stay healthy the rest of your life. I mean, sarcopenia is a real thing. Osteoporosis is a real thing. And, I'm looking at it, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm going to fight it every step of the way. That my goal is to, I always say there's two goals: have sex with the lights on, and always look good naked, and be able to do my cartwheels on my beach for the rest of my life. So there's three driving forces, and I just keep trying to encourage anybody and everybody to get out and start. Don't be intimidated. It's really simple. Just there's so many people who are out there to help, and I just recently posted about an 8-week program that
Meg Squats.
Yeah, Meg Squats, and I'm really excited. I have a whole bunch of people who have written and said they're in and they're signed up and they're doing it, and it's so important.
You're going to have a conversation with that young lady.
Yeah,
because she eats a lot of other types of food. So we got to tell her, look, this other lifestyle you have over here is bullshit. The lifting's cool.
Lifting's cool, but she's not vegetarian, is she?
No, she's not like that. No.
She just had a baby.
She did, yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew's got a baby.
I do.
What are some suggestions for people that have young kids, like introducing some of these meats and some of the things? Like, what do you think is some good ideas?
Yeah, I so wish I had found this so many years ago when
for my
own kids. Yeah, my kids were so already ingrained in mac and cheese and pizza and pasta that it was. I was wrapping my brain around it. I was not going to dictate anybody else, eat in this fashion. So, but absolutely. I would have just, I see these little infants, their first food is gnawing on a beef bone, and, eggs, and not giving them that garbage rice grain cereal and oats, and it's not natural and healthy for us. So that it's really so cool watching different carnivores in social media raising their kids fully carnivore, and it's absolutely, people say, well, how could that be healthy? Well, it's healthy for me, it's healthy for them. So
a lot of times parents will spend 30 minutes, maybe even closer to an hour preparing a meal, and they'll spend like 4 minutes on their children's meal.
Yeah, and it's
like,
it's
like maybe you should think about that a little bit more.
Yeah, and go to the restaurant. Every kid's meal, it's chicken fingers. It's deep fried in the seed oils, and chicken fingers and French fries, and that's the majority of what kids want, and they want what they're used to eating. And just put a hamburger in front of them. Just break up some ground beef and give them fish, and it's funny when you actually watch, if you put on the tray some, cut up pieces of steak and some cut up broccoli, watch what the kids will eat. They're going for the steak. There's some really funny TikTok videos about that.
Yeah, I always bring up Spaghetti Factory because their kids menu, literally everything on there has 0 protein. It's all noodles and some sauce. It's a mac and cheese, or it's spaghetti with nothing on it other than paste or whatever it is.
Yeah.
My son's super spoiled at this point, but I'm really proud of him because I put a Costco steak in front of him. He ate a little bit and then he called it off pretty quickly. When I put a Piedmontese steak in front of him, he doesn't stop. It's crazy. But
he's an expensive baby.
I've never tried Piedmontese yet. I'm gonna have to experience that.
We'll fix that right away. But like him and my daughter, she just sent me a picture of her breakfast plate, and it's like an omelet with bacon and stuff. It's like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you right now. But with him, he I'll say it again, but I feel like I'm Captain America with my my shield blocking all the bad food around him, because everybody wants to give him something. Oh, let's see what happens when we give him cake. Like, let's not, and so it's
and the goldfish crackers and the Cheerios.
Yeah. I did cave with they are, I don't know, they're from Sprouts. They are like shaped like Cheerios, but they're not, but they're close. But we actually lost his doctor because we weren't giving him Cheerios. Like that was the start of it. I like emphasizing that, but like our doctor fired us. It was fucking awesome. She's like, "Wait, you're not doing the cereal anymore?" Like, "No, you're still doing breast milk?" Like, "Yeah." Like, "You guys aren't following what I'm saying, and if you're not following what I'm saying, then I'm gonna have to not be your doctor anymore." I was like, "Fucking peace out." But it is funny though, because this isn't gonna kill him, and I'm like, okay, well, not immediately. He's not gonna die from an Oreo cookie, I'm like, but down the road, like, we have no idea where this is going to go. And right now he loves eating steak. So I'm not going to take that away from him.
It's a real roll of dice whether your kid will be able to have the ability to stop eating those delicious things that other people come to love.
Yeah. And, his parents know how the best track record when it comes to, like, I'll just have one. Shit. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and you see the kids having temper tantrums in the store, just wanting the candy and the sugar. And, again, these companies have specific addiction specialists on their payroll, and they're there for a reason. And, it's appalling when you go down the cereal aisle, too. And it's crazy, chocolate chip cookie cereal and...
So I think when people think about just being carnivore and they're thinking like, oh, she just eats meat, immediately what comes to their mind is that you just eat steak. But there's still a lot of other options. I see you, cooking stuff and you're making things. You probably, for you personally, you probably don't use any seasonings that are vegetable or whatever, but like you probably don't use pepper and garlic and those kinds of things, do you?
I don't use pepper only just in particular because, the pepper seed is a seed and I'm not like such a huge fan that I'm missing it, but I do in my cooking because I'm trying to really make this really flavorful and enjoyable for people who are coming to this. I'm not telling anybody you got to eat steak with salt and ground beef with salt. I mean, there's some really great spices, and most people are not sensitive to spices. So, I have this like a gyro spice, and
I think I saw you making like buffalo something.
Yeah, there's buffalo chicken magic, and that's pretty amazing. It's crazy good.
Making a gnocchi and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and there's another topic is dairy and cheese. So dairy. Is in some people pretty inflammatory, and there's casomorphines in cheese, and that's addictive. And I do find for myself,
Casomorphines?
It's called casomorphines.
Yeah,
Huh. Yeah.
And
It's literally an opioid, right?
Yeah.
yeah. And if I open up a fresh,
Why it's so damn good?
a ball of fresh mozzarella, and I keep going. That's part of my problem, so I have to try to eliminate or limit cheese, and I go through phases of having a little funeral for it, and then it sneaks its way back in. But it's really fun making. I know you've made them too, but chaffles, with the egg and the cheese. Oh,
I think
I
raw,
love that soft boiled eggs,
especially raw cheese, just has a lot of great features to it that I think that
anyone
that can tolerate it should eat it.
Yeah, and the raw aged Parmesan in particular, I think is really good. But yeah, it makes
Those
for
eggs are perfect.
Yeah.
aren't they though?
Soft boiled eggs are so
On a
underrated.
bed of bacon.
So good.
Yeah.
And then I think I sprinkle a little blue cheese on
Oh
it.
wow.
Oh, that's good.
Oh man, that's like such a favorite go-to bowl of food right
I don't
there.
think I've ever had blue cheese.
Oh my gosh, blue cheese
Gorgonzola?
crumbles. Yeah, gorgonzola. Same.
No, actually, that's not
It's
the
like
one.
close enough to your name.
I know, right? No,
yeah,
I never had it.
So good, so good.
But you wouldn't dig blue cheese.
No, I wouldn't.
So
I know.
in going back to your original topic there, yeah, I vary. I'll have lamb, I'll have sausage, kielbasa, bratwurst. Like I'll have different things. Slab of baby back ribs. There's so much variety. I really laugh when people say, "Oh, don't you get bored? So boring." That's how it's like. It's not boring at all. There's so many different types of meats.
You can get creative with it. You can like fry stuff in like tallow, and I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do if you just kind of think about it.
Yeah. And realistically, what it comes down to though is I get really, really simple. And when I get hungry, boy, does a ribeye taste great. I'm never tired of it. And I happen to really like ground beef. And so
I think it's important. You said you never get tired of it. I think it's important for people to not get tired of what they're trying to eat, to stick to any particular diet. But I also think that in order to do that, you need to have you need to intermittently eat. Like there has to be periods of time where you're intermittently not eating, because you have to be like hungry for it every time.
Right. And I tell people, you get hungry enough, pretty much any piece of meat's going to taste good, look good, smell good, and be good, and people are like, but doesn't it get boring? Aren't you bored? I go, no. Are you bored waiting in line at the pharmacy? Are you bored waiting in the waiting room of your doctor?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not bored doing any of those things at all. That would be boring to me. But meat, no, it's not boring.
Do you use electrolytes or anything at all? Because that's one thing that a lot of carnivores do, since they don't get as much. So do you do any of that, or do you just get everything through food?
Yeah,
personally?
you know what? I just kind of have always felt like I don't know what's my need for it. I feel great. So it's interesting because I'm being a broken record here, but Ancestral Man wasn't going to GNC and getting supplements and electrolytes. They weren't going online to order electrolytes.
Yeah.
Do I have enough sodium, magnesium, and potassium? I think so. My blood work is all good. I don't feel, some people get cramps and maybe initially they have to supplement with some extra salt, or I salt my food to taste. And, for some people, maybe that might help them if they've got leg cramps, because that's a common thing at the beginning. It's not easy in the first 2 to 3 weeks typically if you rip the Band-Aid off and go cold turkey on this from a standard American diet, there's some rough spots on that to get your body transitioned over to this, because you're not used to not running on carbs.
And disaster pants might happen, right?
Yes, that can happen in some people. And, I just tell people, just be cautious. Don't overly eat overly fatty cuts of meat. Don't overdo it on pork belly and ribeye with butter. And, you should be fine.
It's probably a huge drastic change for some people.
Oh, huge change.
Maybe normally they're eating half that amount of fat, or don't have that amount of fat in one meal.
Yeah.
Right. Or have rice or pasta or bread to absorb and digest it differently than what they do without it.
So actually, if you remember when you switched, did you go cold turkey? I'm just wondering, how long did it take for your digestive system to be able to function properly when going to the restroom?
So for me, it was a little different because prior to hitting upon the whole zero carb thing, I was paleo, and so I had already given up bread, pasta, rice, beans, potato, corn, that whole kind of thing. So my transition was really pretty smooth and pretty easy. It was more wrapping my brain around, because we would always go out for breakfast on the weekends, and I would always do the upcharge for the toasted bagel with my omelet, and it was like, wow, I'm not eating bread anymore. I'm not, just that concept of taking that totally out of your diet I get it. It's really hard at the beginning to comprehend not having that.
The rigid stance, though, I think it can really be helpful to a lot of people, just because once you start to take out like a couple things, then you start to really realize like, okay, I got to commit to, I got to take that out too. You're like, oh shit, if I'm being honest, I got to take that out too. And then you end up with a clear-cut plan on what it is that you're going to do. For you, pretty much every day, approximately when you're going to eat. You have a good idea. You know what you're going to eat. You look forward to it every time. You know how to prepare it. You know where it's at. You know how to defrost something quickly if you need to. You don't have to carry around food. You don't have to worry about who you're meeting for lunch and where you're eating. A lot of fitness people have a lot of anxiety over holidays and over when they're eating and where they're eating. And, something like the 4th of July or something like Thanksgiving or Christmas. People are so tied in, like those things don't just mean like, oh, I get to be around my family. It's like, oh, I get to eat whatever I want for a handful of days. And for some folks, they're like, I want to choose to not do that anymore. But then they find themselves in that same pattern, and people continue to gain more and more weight, especially around the holidays. People can gain like 4 to 6 pounds pretty easily. And then they don't think about it. They don't ever get back around to like trying to knock that weight off.
Yeah. I often hear that same thing about the holidays, but it really comes down to, I believe it's an excuse to go back to your little favorite pal of an addiction. It's your excuse to go back because, well, it's Christmas. And
I'm not really addicted. It's not that big of a deal.
right. I'm just going to have this. And next thing you know, just like you said, they're down the slippery slope into the ditch and, back full on, eating all that stuff. And, for me, it's, I say, have a plan, you can easily stay on track if you set your mind to it. And, you have control what you're going to eat, and of course my parents know how I eat. So when I head there for a holiday, it's like, well, we got, we're doing a standing rib roast. Awesome. And it's all easy, but, bring something, just bring a pound of bacon. You can always, everybody loves bacon. Cook bacon up.
How do you introduce wine into this diet? Because I think you'd get more women to hop on the carnivore train if you had cheese and wine in there.
Yes. Well, so, alcohol is a whole different can of worms with this.
We can have alcohol?
Well, yeah. So technically not carnivore, but actually I was going to come up with a whole video about this because I get it. It's part of life. It's still part of my social life.
So you still have a drink here and there?
I do.
Oh, cool.
I do. I in particular don't really do so well with wine just because of headaches. But if I'm at a real fine steakhouse and a Camus is ordered, boy, do I enjoy that. But I'll sip one through the entire meal. But for the most part, beer's out, margaritas are out, the sugary stuff's all out. But, a vodka with club, a bourbon, a tequila, that's pretty clean as far as carbs go. And, again, you have to know where you are on the spectrum of that because it's so easy. Picture you're at a Mexican restaurant, you're having some tequila. Now these nachos are there and everybody at the table's raving. These are the best you'll ever have. Have you ever had, and the guacamole, and you're resistant. As soon as you start drinking, all of a sudden you get the fuck it's, you're just like, all right, let's just go for it. So there's that. The social situations are, I either look at the menu ahead of time. You can go online. I sometimes will even call ahead of time. I'll say, are your chicken wings smoked or are they deep fried in oil? So I don't have to make a scene at the table. So, there's things that you can do that are so simple. I can pretty much go anywhere and get a burger, just a bunless burger. You got some extra bacon? Can you throw a fried egg on there? Awesome. It's fine. And if I just don't get my fill because I've just had that one burger, I go home and I eat another burger, or have a steak. But, unless I'm invited out to a vegetarian restaurant, that's the only way I would decline. But I can pretty much find a steak or a burger anywhere, or an omelet. So it's not, again, it's all in making excuses. And I say you can make excuses or make progress, not both.
Real quick question. What oil do you ask them to cook with when you eat out, when you choose to eat a steak out? You said you're allergic to certain oils. So what do you ask them to cook it in?
I want no oil whatsoever.
Just grill it.
Grill it?
And
okay.
So, just laying out there that you cannot have any oil, then that makes it, upfront. And then people say, well, what about olive oil? I've seen enough studies that show 80% of them are adulterated illegally cut with cheap canola oil. So I just don't trust any of them. And so then people say, well, what oil do you use? And I said, I don't have any use for oil. Butter and bacon fat are awesome to cook with if you need to, but I don't even need to, really. I mean, I use sometimes, when I cook eggs, sometimes I like to use butter. Sometimes I do like to I'll do a whipped blue cheese butter on my ribeye. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, there's really no need to put any oil on anything. Yeah,
the oils at restaurants is usually like 50-50. It's like olive oil, canola oil mix.
Yeah.
And they literally, if you ever been behind, you know, if you ever seen them preparing stuff, they use a lot of oil. They're trying to give you the best experience they can. They're trying to make it taste the best they can. The oil will allow some of the other stuff they're cooking with to kind of absorb into it. And so they're really going for it.
Yeah, and they do it to sear the scallop. You know, you get that
Right.
nice crispy brown sear on a scallop. Well, that's done in oil, you know.
I went to a restaurant and I asked for my salmon just to be grilled, and the guy was like, "Oh, I need to check on that. And I'm not sure if we can do that." And then I was like, "I cook salmon all the time. Like you don't need to put any oil with it." You know?
Exactly, yeah.
So then he came back. He's like, "Oh yeah, it turns out we can do that." I was like, "Okay, cool." Andrew, want to take us on out of here, buddy?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Please make sure you guys like today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you guys are not subscribed, turn on all those bell notifications. And I want to hear what you guys have to say down below in the comment section. It's been a while since we've had a pretty hardcore carnivore on air, so I'm excited to see if anything's new with you guys in the carnivore diet. And follow the podcast at MB PowerProject on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, all over the place. My Instagram, TikTok, all that shit too is at I am Andrew Z. And Nsima, where you at?
Nsima Inyang on Instagram, YouTube, and Nsima Inyang on TikTok and Twitter. Dr. Wiedeman, where can they find you?
I am on Instagram at Carnivore Doctor and YouTube channel Carnivore Doctor.
And see, what happened to your hand, buddy?
So open a callus, working with kettlebells.
Oh.
Yeah.
Were you doing anything heavy or crazy?
I wouldn't say too crazy. Just tore open.
I saw on your Instagram your grandmother turned 100.
Yeah.
Dude,
She's 100
damn.
on the
What's
9th.
up with that?
She's got 20 more years to go.
She doesn't want to be here for 20 more years. She continues to let us know. I can't wait for the good Lord to take me.
Oh,
She's doing good though. But yeah.
Does she remind you that you look skinny, that you need to eat?
Yes. Every time I see her, she's telling me I need to eat more food.
I love that.
I know.
I'm at Mark Smellybell. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness never strength. Catch you guys later.